Welcome to another episode of Activateen CC, where we cross the chasm with community chats.
Welcome to Activateen CC. We are delighted to have with us Nancy Giordano, a good friend, and also she is Nancy's founded many things, so I won't even get all of this right, but she's one of the top 50 female futurists. She's the founder of PlayBigInc, Femme Futurists Society, and the Career Fair for the Future. We also have Harper Giordano, incoming senior at Westlake High School, and we have Santiago Castellanos, a recent film graduate from UT at Austin. So this is something that Nancy and I have been speaking about doing this interview together, and it's really like 2020 arrived quietly, and right before spring could even send out shoots, it sent the entire world spiraling. So what I'd like to do is actually get all of you to introduce yourselves and tell us if, Nancy, you say you're endlessly optimistic. I want to hear that optimism. I need it.
Yeah, it's funny. I am really, I got off a call this morning with someone who was like, oh my God, you just filled the living room with sunshine. Because I am really fortunate. I think one thing you have to really realize during this pandemic is that some of us are in just different boats than others, right? Our mutual friend Tom Leonard described recently that we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So we are very fortunate to be in a really safe boat. And so it gives us, I think, a really privileged and unique position to be able to hold the space for what comes next in a much more optimistic and a much more proactive way. And so when I look on the horizon about all the things that are opening up right now and the capacity that it's creating, both in society and in people and inside organizations, I am really optimistic. And I think there's a lot that we can look at in this moment and see that it's opening for a much better next. But I'm also very aware of the fact that people who are day to day right now just trying to figure out how to survive either in their homes or in their organizations or their cities. And so I don't expect everyone to be feeling quite that same energetic outlook at the same time.
Thank you, Nancy, and great to have you here. Harper, love to hear from you. Tell us about yourself. How was it in school?
I'm Harper. I'm about to be a senior at Westlake in
We're counting down the hours.
2 days. Honestly, I was really worried at the beginning of quarantine that I was gonna have like the worst year ever. But I just have stayed with this own group of people all summer, and it honestly has turned out to be a really good summer for me. So I'm kind of excited for senior year now, even though it's going to be very weird. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So
yeah, so we're in a good place.
Thank you, Harper, for joining us. Santiago.
So hi, my name is Santiago. I was born and raised in Venezuela, and then as soon as I graduated high school, I moved to the US to pursue higher education, and I earned my degree in radio, television, and film from UT Austin, and I graduated May 2019, so right on time, like before everyone, like all of my friends, they couldn't finish like this past school year, and their graduations were canceled and everything, so my graduation was like the last normal one, so I feel very lucky. But yeah, I lucked out.
Thank you, Santiago. So what I wanted to ask you was, Nancy, what is a futurist?
Well, I'll make it a distinction that there's this whole category called futurism or foresight, and there's lots of different flavors and ranges of it. There are people who do really extended forecasting of where they think the world is going to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now and the role that technology will play, and they put a lot of puzzle pieces together to kind of deduce where they think that the future is, or deduce where things are going to be in the future. And I mean, sometimes they're science fiction writers, right? They're not always professionals in the terms of using that as a title, but it's part of the work that they do. Mine is, I call it a strategic futurist. I'm really trying to help people build bridges between here and what is happening next and better prepare for what's happening. So I do look far out. There's a project we just did recently on what would the world look like 50 years from now, which was really, really fascinating to get paid to go do. So I love to learn and I love to put the puzzle pieces together. So that was a really sort of stretched us. It's hubris. We'll have no idea really what's happening, but we can kind of start to say, even if it's not 50 years, by looking at it that far, we can say, well, in 20 years, this for sure will happen. And in 10 years, this will happen. But we don't always know exactly when some of those things are going to flip. And so all I'm trying to do is help people build capacity for it. And I think really the big thing right now is not so much knowing like where AI is going to jump in and how it's going to change every industry, or where we're going to be living in virtual reality and where we aren't. It's really building the capacity for change, the capacity to be able to take on new and know that you can navigate it with confidence. That's really, to me, the key thing that I'm doing right now with folks.
And the follow-up is, what happened when 2020 hit? Because I'm sure that everything, all the scenarios that had been in place in 2019, and even as early as February 2020, just kind of imploded.
Yeah, personally, or you mean for the
Both.
world?
Both.
Well, I will say that, the joy of being a futurist, and part of the reason I think is because I don't like to be blindsided. I like to be prepared. And so we have been talking about so many of these things for a very long time, right? We've been encouraging organizations to be more adaptive, to be more humanistic, to be more sustainable, to be more inclusive, right? All the things now that we're seeing, wow, there were big, huge cracks that have become more exposed. So the organizations that did actually spend more time being curious or investigating or building some bridges into the future were much better prepared than the ones that didn't, right? The ones that had already done some remote work, the ones who pulled more technology into their infrastructure, the ones who had built really tight cultures inside their organization and really clear North Stars. Like those are ones that are actually able to survive much more, less painfully, I should say, a little more successfully. And so I do think that what we're seeing is all that. And so, yeah, some of us did predict. We didn't know what the event was going to be, but we knew there was going to be something that was going to be a big disruptor. And we certainly knew that all these things that we're seeing now and the behaviors that we're doing were definitely going to happen regardless of whether or not we got pushed. The difference is that we're doing it all at the same time. We figured different industries and different geographies would sort of take this trip at different rates. And now we've all been thrown in together at the same time. So that's really the extraordinary thing. And then I think, as an individual, we've been doing the same thing. Like all my, March through May plans got wiped out on March 13th at 3 p.m. So we've been doing our own version of adapting and going through the, practicing what we preach around this. And it's good.
I remember you had planned for your book to be launched at South by, right?
Yeah, that one might not have happened anyway. So we can blame that one on COVID, but that might have been a little delay anyway. But yeah, no, but we also had, what we'll talk about later, the career fair for the future was all lined up and ready to go, right? I was planning, right. And then certainly like a week or two after, I was planning to go to Warsaw, and then I was going to go to India, and then I was going to do this really amazing talk at Microsoft, all these things that I was so looking forward to. Spring break, actually, we had a spring break trip. It was going to be our last before my girl goes off with her friends next year. So there was this real weird, each month has had its own emotional cadence. And so for March, it was really about mourning. It was mourning all the stuff that we lost. And then April was all about rebuilding and setting up studios and thinking about online stuff and creating, the infrastructure for the Femme Futurists Society. And then, we've been hustling ever since then. And we've been really busy. It's been great. It's a really good time to be a futurist. I will tell you that. People are much more open now to the conversations that we were starting prior. And I just was invited to give a talk to 2,600 people in the emerging markets around this idea of leadering, because they have so much changes happening in that organization outside of COVID, just in terms of mergers and changes and regroupings, and people are sort of shell-shocked, and they need some help navigating it. So I feel grateful to be in a position to help people do that.
Thank you. And Harper, what happened with you, in terms of what plans you had in 2019 and what happened in March?
Well, so I was finishing up my junior year, which is the hardest year that you have to do. So having the last 9 weeks online was definitely a little bit tricky, and did not have any motivation the last 5 weeks. But I don't know, it was just very weird and uncomfortable to do Zoom for school, and to not have that final goodbye to junior year. I feel like it was still kind of open-ended, and our last thing was just being on Zoom, and our teachers were like, okay, see ya, have fun, have a good senior year. So I don't know, right now it feels like I'm going into junior year. It doesn't really feel like I've finished that part. But something that I didn't get to do was I'm in a medical assistant class at Westlake, and I was supposed to get certified, but we didn't get to finish like our studying or get to take it because you have to take it
An exam.
with a proctor. Yeah, it was a certification test. And so I was supposed to work at a doctor's office this upcoming semester for mentorship, but now I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. So we're gonna have to think about that. But yeah, I mean, I might get to take it again this year, but I have no idea. So
Yeah, I think we were talking about it earlier about all the uncertainty. Like it's just
Yeah,
it's not so much that you have to have it, delayed or postponed. It's that you just don't know if it gets to come back or in what form.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask too. How are you navigating with your future, which is, I think, the hardest time. There were all those folks who graduated in 2020, right? But they had finished most of their work, and then there was just this one, the last 9 weeks. But with the class of 2021, it's this really crucial year that is coming up. And some of you are going to be saying goodbye to high school. Some of you are going to be saying goodbye to college. I have both. I have my middle daughter and my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter is the same age as you, Harper. Both of them are in that. They're going to graduate in 2021. And how do you see 2021? If you could look into May of 2021, how do you see that?
I honestly think that everyone's just going to be so like messed up from the college admissions part of it. Like I think that all of my friends and I are going to have a very hard time applying to college, and in May we're not going to know. I mean, we're all going to have figured out where we got accepted or even if we're going to college, because I know people that while they were in quarantine, they decided that they didn't want to go to college anymore, and they like are taking gap years or going to like explore the world. Someone I know is going to Israel for a year, and she's never been, and she's Jewish, and she just decided to go. So that was cool to hear about. So it's just interesting to see how many people are gonna not go to college or go through a different path. So I don't know. I think May is going to be a very weird time, especially because we're probably going to have online graduation and everything. I think class of 2021 got it the worst.
Yes.
Worst out of it. Like everyone was feeling bad for 2020, but I think that at least they had the first semester of senior year.
I'll sort of zoom out and instead of as a mom, talk again as a strategist. I was on a LinkedIn Live with a chief strategy officer of a big company last week. And we were both talking about it from a corporate level. And then we were also talking about it as moms. And she talked a lot about this online connectivity. And I said, the hardest part is the rituals. It's all the rituals. Like you guys are super connected online. You've got all these ways of being able to maintain a social life, both, here and there, but it's the rituals that you don't know how. And in the real world, everyone's got that, weddings and funerals and all kinds of, change of life things. But I think for this year, it's hard, in particular for this group. And then the second part of it is that every time they went to go to reach for the stone that is like the next thing that you're supposed to be climbing up, it just sort of crumbles in front of you. Right? So how do you prepare yourself, and how do you know when everything you've been taught is that this is how it's supposed to go, and this is everything, literally the curriculum has been designed to get you there. Right? Harper was taking the APs last year that everyone had been taught was going to be a 4-hour test, and it turned out to be a 45-minute online thing. Like it's just, so I think on the one hand, it is, you got a raw deal. On the other hand, I wrote an open letter to the class of 2020 at the time saying you were being groomed for adaptivity in a way that nobody else has ever been given. And with a significant amount of support because we are all going through it at the same time. So I do think that there's a gift on it. It's going to take a little while for it to be fully revealed. Yeah.
Santiago, you're on the other side, right? You are entering the job market.
Yeah. That got even weirder because I graduated in May, so I started to look for a job back in Austin, and because of my visa situation, I couldn't get one. And then I moved to Spain because I'm a European citizen, so I was like, it's going to be easier. I have the paperwork, it's going to be great. And then as soon as I get everything in order to start applying for jobs, boom, it hits, everyone starts getting fired. And all of my applications that I had sent in, they emailed me back just saying, this is paused for the moment, so we're not going to give you any updates. So it's just standing by and waiting for everything to go back to normal and keep applying as much as I can, but then there's so much I can do.
There's a really key phrase about back to normal, because the question will be, what is that? You know, is there such a thing as normal? And so I was just literally reading a post that another futurist friend of mine just put on Instagram, and she has a very funky word for it. I describe it a little simpler, but the liminal gap, the gap between here and there. And that, you know, we assume that there's just like this bridge, and that like the next big like solid thing is going to exist. And the reality is it's all being designed and redesigned. It's going to be dynamic. And so the question is there really going to be the normal, or is there just a new way of being able to navigate it? And tenacity becomes a really big part of that. And also an awareness of all the things that are missing, right? Because I think that what we're going to see is a lot of innovation come out of this period, because people realize that there isn't a really good place to be able to, whatever the various structures were to find internships or to find jobs are not holding up. But people are finding that there's these other really interesting new tools or new ways or different things that are missing that people are creating, that I think is the cool opportunity there. So my counsel to Santiago is just to not wait for it to all like calm down. I think it is about, there's a certain level of tenacity and creativity that is being required right now.
So that's a great segue to the careers, Nancy. What are the careers when you were designing your career fair for the future before COVID? It looked a certain way. And I'm sure you're planning to bring that back at some point this year, right?
Yeah, you know, so first, you know, the reason that the career fair for the future was ever created is we knew that there was a lot of anxiety amongst youth about what the future looks like and their place in it. And their parents aren't very confident about it, and their teachers aren't very confident about it, and the news media, you know, throws a really scary narrative around. And so how can we counteract that and give people more confidence that there's actually a lot happening and it's very exciting and that you get to be a part of it? But the technology will change. Journalism won't look the same. Medicine won't look the same. You know, smart cities will have all kinds of new careers attached to them or opportunities attached to them. Careers won't really look the same, right? What will work look like? So we figured, well, all these brilliant people are coming in town for South by Southwest. And since youth can't really attend South by Southwest for a number of reasons, we would just sort of pluck some of the smartest people that were here for South by and create our own little event. And in 2019, you were part of it. It was great. And, you know, and people, you know, Harper remembers thinking a lot about the future of medicine, well-being, and self, right? We get to see the social robotic duck, and you get to think about genomic medicine, and you get to think about the role that mental health plays in physical health, and all these great things that we're learning. So we had it all planned for 2020. It was the future of gaming, which was awesome, because gaming wasn't just like online gaming. It was how gamification is part of everything. We were going to have someone from Major League Soccer who's going to talk about the esports side of the analog game, and it was gonna be great. And we had another one on medicine, another one on smart cities, and you know, it all went poof. And so we've been trying to figure out, how do you recreate that, and is there a need to, because there's so much content right now and people are sort of overwhelmed. And we kept trying to figure out, do we do it in Minecraft, do we do it in Twitch, do we do it on whatever, you know, I want to do it in some really interesting virtual reality way, but then there was too many hurdles for kids to be able to log on. And so we just sort of, right now, we were in our own place of overthinking, can't quite figure it out yet. And part of me was going to let it go. But interestingly, I've gotten now 2 requests, one from the son of some client I worked with a zillion years ago, who asked me if it was going to happen again because they really wanted to be a part of it. A college student, I think, in Ohio now. And then recently I just gave a big keynote talk to 2,000 employees at Clorox. And I mentioned this piece about youth very, very briefly. It came up in a Q&A session. And one of the executives, who's a woman in Costa Rica, reached out to me specifically about that and said her 12 and 14-year-olds don't believe that there's going to be a positive future. They don't think that there's a place in it for them, and her heart's broken. And she asked if I could give a talk to a bunch of moms and kids in Costa Rica. So the need for what you're doing and what I get to do is greater than ever, you know? And so we're trying to figure out the form. So now I'm thinking maybe we end up doing this kind of thing, or maybe the future of gaming just becomes a conversation like this, and we just throw it on YouTube and let kids watch it when they want to. It's just, there's a lot of work that needs to be done right now across all these domains. We're just trying to figure out, I need people like Santiago and Harper who want to jump in and do it. So it's not all just the moms doing it, I think is the key here. So if anybody's watching this and wants to be part of helping us build a career fair for the future, come on, we need you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, just back to Santiago, is that there are these opportunities that are emerging that didn't exist before, right? All this digital connecting and conferencing. And I mean, I have clients who did like 3 events a year and who now did 3 events in a month.
Yeah.
Right. So the tools that you have learned at UT are actually really, really useful right now, more so than they might have even been a year ago. So I think there's lots of places to
That's
be.
true. And I think this, I asked Santiago, I said, which generation are you? And he said, maybe millennial. I know Harper is Gen Z, but I think you are probably on the cusp of Gen Z.
I think that the millennial cutoff is 1996.
I was
Yeah.
1996, so yeah, I think so.
It's always hard. I think you're in that liminal.
Yeah, exactly. I would call it the cusper, right? You're between 2.
Yeah.
I'm like that. I'm like technically like the last month of like boomer right before Gen Z. I mean, between Gen X and Z. Sorry, Gen X. You know, I just get frustrated with the whole lettering thing. I think we've got to come up with a more.
You're Gen Z at heart, Nancy.
No.
No? Okay.
She didn't know what IGTV was.
I like all of these.
Okay, so I want to ask a question for both of you, Harper and Nancy. Mother and daughter, how has it been, you know, you going through what you're going, Harper, and, you know, what Nancy's seeing? You know, how does she bring that home? How do you react? Because your experience is very different from, you know, her experience, right? How do you find that common place, common ground?
You want to go first?
We're super fortunate. Harps and I are really close. You know, we do spend a lot of time together, but we know sort of at one point, Harper put a rule in the very beginning, like in March, there was only like, she was only required to have 1 meal a day with me. She's just like, let me just be clear. We're not doing this 3 times a day. So you can pick breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but it's only going to be 1 that I have a mandatory, you know, time with you. Which I laugh, but it was sort of a coping strategy. It was like, how do we make sure that we've got enough of our own time? We don't always feel like we're not there for the other person. But I don't know. I think we're doing great.
I mean, I think we keep calling ourselves an old married couple because we wake up in the morning and have breakfast, and then I go do my own thing.
We talk about the
And she
headlines.
does her own thing, and then we come back and we watch TV till like 1 a.m.
Okay.
And we go to bed, and then we do it all again.
Again, for us, it's really weird because I was on the road a big chunk of the time. Like half the time I was traveling, and
Miss those days.
Well, you miss it for 2 reasons. 1, because you had the house to yourself, and B, because you got to go on some of the trips with me. So we used to have some really great adventures together. So yeah, somehow we found a rhythm here that we're doing all right.
I've been going for morning walks with my daughters. It's been fantastic. I mean, they would not have really even wanted to wake up early in the morning, but
Don't put that idea in her head.
Harper's like, don't give her any ideas. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Santiago, what about you and your family? You know, what's been going with your parents and you?
My case is different because I lived with them for 17 years and then I moved on my own for 6 years and then I had to come back. Going back to your family after 6 years of you doing whatever you want, it's not easy at all. Because it's like we've all developed different ways of living and different like routines, and then we had to just like mesh them up together. And it was a mess. I was going crazy. So at the beginning, when everything started, we sat down. We're like, okay, we need to make it work because otherwise we're gonna kill ourselves or kill each other, whichever comes first. So we stayed sane as much as we could, but then we started our quarantine like March 13, I think it was. And then by May, like beginning of like June, we were just like going crazy. So at that point, my best friend had moved to Portugal for a few months. And I just, my dad was like, I can take you there if you want. It's just like a 5-hour drive. So he took me there and I spent a month there because I needed a break from my family. And I was there for a month. I got to unwind and everything, and now I'm back, and it's been fine for now because we're like more free. We can go out, face masks and everything, but we can go out more freely. But at first it was really friendly, but then it just got to a point where it's just like unbearable.
But I think that what you touch on is again, each geography had a different, Texas never had the full-on lockdown that you had in Spain or they had in New York.
Wait, I need to stop. We've always So we're supposed to have the full lockdown, but Texas is Texas. We're like, there's a lockdown. We'll be out. We'll be.
Yeah, well, I think it was a combination of, compared to my friends in New York and California, it was like super strict. And I don't remember ours actually being legislated quite as strictly. And because the numbers weren't as high for us, right? So we kept thinking, like, I don't know, I think we were doing okay. So I think that part of it is each family has created their own survival strategy. And I did let Harper and each of my boys have their bubbles. You know, my closest coworker and friend, Emma, we just became a family early on, and Emma and I work together and see each other all the time. Otherwise we'd go crazy. So I think that we've been feeling like, okay, within safe bubbles, we're okay, right? And we're going to take the risk. I'd let Zane stay on campus. I'd let Hugo stay with his girlfriend in Texas A&M and College Station, where they really didn't care about masks. So because we just weighed out the risks. So I think that, again, we've been fortunate enough that we've had more flexibility in our geography. I think in places where it was really hard hit, like Spain, and in places where you didn't have that kind of confidence in the bubbles, it's much harder.
We were definitely going crazy in April.
Were we?
Yeah.
All rolls together.
April, we never left the house once, and I was maybe I was gonna kill you. Maybe it wasn't.
Maybe that's about the shit.
That was April.
What you did, Santiago, you just unleashed too much honesty here now.
I know. No such thing as too much.
That's what we did.
I was honestly in April. I was focused on a lot of rebuilding. You know, I feel like I spent a little less time thinking about what's going on in here than I was trying to figure out, like, how do we figure out how to rebuild or add value to the work that needs to be done right now. But April was a really big learning kind of rebuilding month.
Actually, for many families, what happened during this time was kids, you know, college, school, you know, even those who had just gotten jobs, everyone just moved back home because you know, people, there were internships that didn't happen. So, you know, plans were deferred, you moved back home. So suddenly meal times became a thing.
Yeah.
You know, family conversations, whether they were heated or not, became a thing. And COVID's actually has made us reimagine what family can be. And I think that's
back to the same thing I would say about with organizations, just to jump in. What we're finding with organizations is strong ties make it even, they're doing really well in the remote work, and weak ties are really struggling, and there's a tremendous amount of stress. I will say the same thing in families, right? If you have strong ties going into this, then those things got reinforced, and all that work that we built in to build these really strong families and those kinds of rituals and the value of that became a really safe place. We know that there are many, many families for whom that is not the case, right? And I have a significant amount of empathy for those that didn't have that kind of structure put in place. And there's a tremendous amount of pain and stress in those. So I think that I just want to make the distinction between those who were had those strong ties.
True.
And safe.
So Santiago, what would you like to ask Nancy?
So what are some of the market signals that my generation should pay more attention to?
Well, it's funny because Harper and I were looking through the questions this morning, and we looked up market signals. Like, what does Santiago really want to know in terms of market signals? So can I ask you, how do you define market signals?
Basically, market signals would be what are some of the trends out there that you're seeing? What's happening with businesses, right?
Yeah, so I'll look at it this way and say, what are some of the, and actually it's not even trends anymore, right? It's big, huge shifts. They're giant shifts that are happening. Early on, like on March 23rd, like 10 days after sort of the world hit for us, I wrote an essay about what we will know and what we won't know by September. And in it, I started reflecting on, there are certain things that we do see and some things that we won't have to, and that there are these big, huge awakenings that are happening. And so for me, it's more about what are the awakenings and what are they then, the expectations they create for the future. And actually, I remember even asking Harper, like, what are the things that we won't know? And she's like, the impact that such unequal education will have on the generations to come, which I thought was a really smart and sensitive comment that she had at the time. Like, she already, even at that moment, knew, right, that what her Zoom experience was going to be different than it's going to be across the city, never mind across the country or across the world. And so there are some big things that we don't know.
Even in my school, like, some people I know did not go to Zoom class at all, and some people I know took notes of every single video we watched. So,
well, that shows the power of being self-directed, which is a whole different portion.
Some people can't actually focus.
Right.
Like, don't.
Right.
Can't do it.
Right.
So cut them some slack.
Well, but I think it's both, because someone has to be really empathetic, but I think that whole idea of it self-directed is actually a really important part of this whole thing right now. So I guess I just look at the big, huge shifts, right? We definitely see now that we are going to be more and more reliant on digital delivery of every single aspect of our lives. We knew that beforehand. It only got accelerated. We actually see headlines now that show that AI and robotics adoption is actually happening faster because of the concern about being able to bring people back to work. So whether that's in a manufacturing plant or out in the field or in a hospital or whatever it is, that move we knew was going to happen anyway. It's become accelerated. But so are, again, all the ways which we want to connect. So the way I talk about it is, if you looked at COVID 20 years ago, right? If this had happened 20 years prior, we wouldn't have had smartphones, we wouldn't have had social networks, we wouldn't have had video conference calls, we wouldn't have had cloud that we can even do any of this stuff. We would have been a really different world. So now imagine 20 years from now, what would the world look like? Would we actually have VR classrooms, right? Or augmented reality way of training people really fast for something, where robotics are much more embedded in our work. So anyway, that whole digital part is a big, huge part of it. We're becoming much more environmentally aware. Whether or not we're going to make choices around that, I don't know. But the fact is, this pandemic has made clear our choices, our behavior have an impact on the planet. Right. When you see clear skies in India and clear skies in Beijing and in Mexico City, and you see clear water, you can't deny that our behavior has an impact. And we also saw geographies that had really bad air quality, like in China, were ones where the virus hit in a much more dramatic way. So it also makes people very vulnerable. So it's our impact on the planet and the planet's impact on us. And so I think it's going to change the way we think about travel, the way we think about consumption, the way we think about a whole bunch of ways in which we we were aware of, but we probably didn't take quite as seriously. And there are going to be all kinds of things that help us do that right now.
Well, you also have the PPE glut, right? Which is the
Oh, I know. I think about that. I was even resistant about using gloves at the beginning. So I'm like, what are you going to do? Just throw all this stuff away? Like, it's just, all this latex and all this rubber and all this plastic.
We use plastic, yeah.
The plastics industry has had a giant boom because of this, right? Every time you see the partition going up in a classroom, you think, man, something's going to have to do with that, 5 years from now or 5 months from now. So yeah, that's a big, huge issue. So that's one I think that we're going to be paying a lot more attention to, and certainly all the inequities that exist in our system. We're going to be spending a lot more time thinking about how we make things more accessible and more affordable and much more equitable. Not just in the social justice piece, which is huge, but across all these other domains. And so I think people are just becoming a lot more sensitive to things. So those are the kinds of things that I don't know if there's a market signals or trends or shifts, but those are awakenings that are begging our attention to address more successfully. And the other thing I will just say is that, I talk about the youth quake. You do have this huge generation of youth who have gone now through this ride and continue to, who cared a lot about the climate before this happened, who have been already awakened around school violence and other issues. And then now with the Black Lives Movement and the Me Too movement, it'll be really fascinating to see this generation, of which you two are a part, really galvanize for change. Voting will be a big deal, right? And the idea of supporting candidates and getting involved in some of these things and building different structures. So I do think that's another one of the reasons I'm very hopeful. We can talk about the anxiety that exists, but you can also talk about the amazing potential.
Yeah, I'd like to actually, so Harper, what are you spoke about some of the uncertainty, right? What is some of the things that you adapted to for the future? And when I say the future, we're no longer thinking about 5 years, or even where future is even 3 months from now, right? Is the SAT going to be on? Or are they going to cancel it again? Or, do I have to go to Fredericksburg to give my SAT, which is what my daughter's thinking.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because I took the very last SAT that they were giving on March 14th. And it was my blind SAT that I was going to take, just to see my raw score so I could know what to study. And then I was also planning on taking the March ACT that Westlake offers. Mm-hmm. And I was just going to base everything off from there. And then everything got canceled. Yeah. And so I signed up for one ACT in Belton, an hour and a half away, because that was the closest one that they had. And my other ACT in August got canceled. Yes. I signed up for another one, but it's probably going to get canceled. And so I don't know. It's kind of a mess, and it's kind of annoying to me that I don't know. Well, also because colleges are saying that they're test optional, but then they're also saying it's very good to have that test because it'll weed you out from the other people, the exact same stuff, but they couldn't take the test. And so it's also just very annoying. I kind of wish that they would just cancel it altogether, but they can't do that. So I don't really know. And I just think that since admissions are going to be so weird this year, like I can't take advice from anyone else that has done the college process, because for them it was a completely different rodeo. And so I'm going to have to, or my class is going to have to like navigate it on their own. And then, because it's going to change the way college admissions are for like the rest of years.
Forever, yeah.
Like they're probably going to make test optional. I think they already made test optional for the class of 2022 too. A lot of twos. But I think that they already did. So it's just going to be really weird to be the first class that has to like navigate through that. So,
but I think you're a really good point, right? That the people go to college counselors, or they go to the class before them, or the siblings that you had before, they told you how to do it. There is no roadmap.
Exactly. Nobody knows. That's the scary part, right? You cannot turn to people who were the experts because they know as much as you do, right? And that's scary because you're who do you turn to? So how are you working with anxiety, ambivalence, and ambiguity?
As opposed to also hope, prosperity, and action. Yeah.
If I'm being perfectly honest, I kind of push that away.
Yeah, that's honest. Yeah.
I try not to think about it. Every time my friends and I bring it up, we're like, okay, no, we can't talk about this. It's just going to make us sad. And so, I don't know. I mean, I definitely need to face it at some point. But the best way that I do it is pretend like everything is fine. And pretend like I mean, obviously I think about it. To me, I think that it's all going to work out, That's just the only way that I can think about it without getting freaked out.
Yeah. Because
college admissions, I mean, either everyone's going to get in or no one's going to get in, or no one's going to apply. So it's going to be super weird. I don't know.
It's interesting because Harper was suggesting that maybe she would even try some different stretch schools, because she's like, you know what, at this point, it's all going to be like, the cards are all going to be thrown up in the air anyway, and they don't know what they're doing. So there might be this opportunity to kind of get to a school that you might not have before if all the algorithms were perfectly in place. And so there's opportunity in some of this stuff too. One thing, the college admissions questions, like I don't know if your daughter's gotten the actual applications yet. They haven't changed the questions, Shaku. The kids are going through the biggest thing that they have gone through, in 100 years. Yeah. Right. The question is still, what is something that you've had to overcome to be able to get to blah blah blah? I'm just like seriously, if there's the simplest part of the process that you could have redesigned is just the questions. Right? I'm just like, oh my God, you're young. I know. It's such a missed opportunity to not have given the kids a chance for deep inquiry.
Right. But that's to Harper's point, right? You cannot plan too far because everything's changing every day. So maybe, Harper, tomorrow they'll change the question.
Well, that's what I'm like. I'm like, okay, I'll take the SAT in August again, and then I'll figure it out from there. And then I got canceled. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just not going to plan on taking any of them. I'll still study, but I highly doubt that I'm honestly going to get to take them.
Can I just say that there's this weird other silver lining that's happened though? Because I will say around anxiety, I think Harper held so much anxiety during her junior year and worked so hard to be able to take that really heavy course load that she had, that when it went to Zoom land, in some ways, you started to feel better, right? You were a little less overwhelmed by all of it. And you're seeing this in other places, where there was a whole op-ed piece yesterday about a parent who's decided that maybe they won't even send their kids back to the school system because they feel like their kid is actually the 15-year-old who had ADHD actually is much happier in sort of being out of that crazy, route.
Because I think we all bought into it, right?
Right, exactly.
Parents bought into it, kids bought into it. So Santiago, I know that you have another question.
So I always try to be optimistic, but then I really try to be realistic about things. So how would you recommend for us to look into the future and move forward with a balanced view between being optimistic and realistic?
Wow. She is the most unrealistic person I've ever met. So that's going to be a very hard question for her to answer.
Harper likes to believe that she holds the ballast for pragmatism in our house. And I hold it all for optimism in our house. So we maybe have to throw it at her. Here's the deal. The reality is there are challenges. Like, I'm not in any way saying that there aren't. And there's actually a tool that we've built, a strategic tool that talks about our emotional response around these things. What am I relieved by? What am I inspired by? What am I frustrated by? What am I fearful of? Because there isn't any like only glass half full or only glass half empty. It's naive to believe that it's that simple and that binary. I will say all the research shows that if you are optimistic versus pessimistic, you live longer and you create more. So if nothing else, I would just say it's better to be biased on the positive. But I do think looking at the things that we're frightened by or that we're frustrated by are actually really important, and they give us a place to focus some of our attention, right? Many of the things that I've created that Chakra gave me credit for at the beginning, I created because I was frustrated. Like, I'm frustrated by this college admissions question, right? I was frustrated that kids were anxious and couldn't get access to South by. Or I was frustrated by whatever. And so I think that sometimes gives us a really, really great place to build a solution that we think needs to exist. And the things that I'm frightened of, which are like bias in AI, which I think is huge, right? Or this growing inequity, which I think is significant. I'm sorry that my question is not inspiring. My answer is not inspiring you. No worries there, babe. But I think that I put my attention to trying to solve for that. Right? I talk about it in every talk that I give. I joined an artificial intelligence company so I would understand the bias problem better. Like, I dive into it and try and go into what I can do to try and head it off. So if there are that many things that are calling for your attention, there are great places for you to then go put your energy.
So I'm going to ask all of us in rapid fire. Nancy, what are your top 3 skills? Or sorry, that's for you.
For the future?
Yeah, I forget the future for now.
For now, no. I mean, well, the thing I always talk about, right, is curiosity. Number 1, like really, being curious, incentivizing it in our households and our organizations, whatever. Like, we talk about it, but we actually don't fully support it. So really being curious, and then with that goes self-directed. Which is agency, like really believing that you actually have something that you can contribute to a situation, or the capacity in which you can go build something. And then empathy for others, I think, are really, really huge. And so I'll just throw in a 4th one, which is then connectivity. I really do think prioritizing connection and community with others, that's how you learn. That's how you have confidence. That's how you don't feel like you're alone in this and all by yourself. So I think that we, again, don't always prioritize connection and community. And so I think it's curiosity, agency, community, empathy.
Thank you. Thank you. Harper, what are you planning to do when you go back to school?
What do you mean? Like,
what do you have, what are you looking forward to for the first 4 weeks of online?
Well, at Westlake, since it's such a big school, they just have so many senior year traditions, And so I was very much looking forward to those. Like, on the first day of school, you decorate the commons and then dress up and like annoy all the underclassmen with whistles and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a rite of passage to do that. So it's kind of sad that I can't, but, and like senior sunrise and definitely a lot of other stuff that I'm forgetting. But I don't know. It's going to be weird. And then my friends and I hope that everyone just makes new traditions that will probably be passed down.
Have you guys been talking about them?
That's a great idea. New
traditions. I hope someone.
Well, kind of.
But this is my frustration. Someone.
Like, the thing is, you can't plan it with the whole grade because you can't be with the whole grade.
Yeah, that does make it harder.
Yeah. So, there's no lunch anymore, right? There's no lunch.
Exactly. I mean, it's insane.
So we need to find new ways. I mean, I think that's the tricky thing, right? So I will say again, like, there's another thing that somebody posted about, like, they and them and someone. And so the fact is, we are it, right? And so there will be things that your group does. I mean, one of the things that I think that, Harper and I were talking about this yesterday or today, which is the upside of this is that she spent a lot of time with a really small group of people this summer and gotten really close with that group of people, right? There was like, not everyone was traveling for summer vacations or doing their summer jobs or doing their whatever. And so you have to look at, I guess, for the stuff that's the upside of it. And what does that then give you the capacity to go do, right? So if you've got the small group of people who've spent so much time and know each other so well, maybe there's something y'all can create, right? They can extend it to others. So I just keep trying to look for where there was a win.
I'm going to miss those cars, at least for the first month, where you have senior and they, they have 2021.
I do. Where am I driving to? Am I driving away? Seniors!
I think they should still do that. Actually, I was trying to advocate for the fact that they would do chalk drawings in the parking lot, but.
So, so what would your advice to incoming juniors be?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that their junior year is honestly, it's either going to be super easy or super hard. Like, for me, I kind of overloaded myself junior year, and so I was very stressed all the time. But I also tried my hardest that year, which made me feel better about myself because I tried hard for the grades that I got. I didn't just like slack off like I normally do. And
she doesn't slack off, and she did really straight A's.
Anyways, I don't know. I guess my advice would just be to try and pay attention as much as you can, and just don't like stress yourself out too much, because it'll all work out as it always does. Because I know I would be super freaked out before a test, and I would study for like 3 hours, and I really just didn't need to do that at all. So,
can I ask you a question? Do you regret that you worked so hard for junior year to get the grades to be able to do the path that you were planning on, and then the path sort of blew up? Like, would you do anything differently if you knew what had happened?
I would say regret is a very strong word.
Okay.
But maybe, well, because my fourth quarter grades were online grades, and so they were very easy to like have a high grade in, because I would just get one assignment a week. So if I had known that third quarter, I probably wouldn't have tried. Honestly, I'm glad I didn't know that. I wouldn't have tried that hard.
Yeah.
If I knew that this was coming, I would not have tried as hard as I did. So I'm very glad that I was unaware that this was happening.
I think that's how do the juniors stay motivated then?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard for them.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, it might be easier for them because they get to like de-stress themselves at home and stuff. They're not like stuck at school. Like sometimes when I was stressed at school, I would cry and I would like cry to my teacher once. It was embarrassing, but like they get to do that in the safety of their own home. They don't have to like have their teacher show them pictures of their dog to cheer them up. So I don't know.
You became close with your teacher after that, though? Is that there? This is what I think the importance of being real is.
Yeah, I think that's also the difference. Like, they're not going to be able to have relationships with teachers, which is something that, like, I love. Like, I'm really close with, like, my teachers. Well, some of them don't like me. It's hit or miss. But I think it's sad that they're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was on a meeting, and one of the teachers was, the teacher's common concern was that they're going to have their students come in, their new students, and they don't get to actually form a rapport with them in the beginning of the year. That was a real, because this whole emotional wellness piece, the whole emotional, the bonding, the empathy, all of that comes from a connection that's not digital. And you can only do so much. So Santiago, what is your advice to college students who are at this moment in Texas, who've just signed in?
I feel like what you can do the most at the moment is just like really focus on your education, because it's really going to come in handy. Because in my years, I mean, we had more freedom, and then we used to focus a lot on our social life, which I did. I balanced it pretty well because I got really good grades, and I finally graduated with honors, but I didn't miss any parties or anything. So I was really good at balancing that. There's a lot of people that can.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, that's exactly. She's like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I had a rule. I would not do homework on the weekends. So I would do everything from Monday to Thursday night. And then weekends, no textbooks, no anything. So my advice would be to try to enjoy it, because it shouldn't be torture. Like, a lot of people think you go to college to suffer, and you don't really, unless you major in like engineering, like petroleum engineering or something. But
you're in that field,
yeah, just try to enjoy it. It's just, I think, like, as of now, those were my best years, like, thus far, and I enjoyed them so much, and I lived like the best experience that I ever had. I met the best people that I could ever meet, and just try to organize yourself and don't stress more than you should. because it's just a test, or it's just an assignment. It's your life doesn't depend on it, and you're more than your grades.
I'm ready for college. Whatever it will be, whatever it will look like. Yeah, true. Although you might be living from home.
No.
So what are you all watching? What have you binge watched lately?
My mom has watched Hamilton 4 times.
Oh, 6 times. Hamilton we watched because I turned everybody else who hasn't seen it onto it, so I feel
it's on Disney Plus, right? It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Hamilton? Yeah.
It's worth the $6.99 if you just for a month. But we watched Grey's Anatomy. We watched New Girl. Those are the ones we watched together.
Yeah. Sometimes she won't let me leave the house without watching a TED Talk.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Tell us about that. I like that. Tell us about that.
She just said, she was like, you need to stimulate your mind. You're not in school. So every once in a while, it was supposed to be a daily thing, but
you negotiated.
Lacked off on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think it was negotiated as much as just not fully reported. But the
some
data is incomplete.
It's also because some of them are interesting that I like to watch them, and then I'll watch another one after that. Or some of them I don't like at all, and then I don't want to watch anymore because I didn't like it very much. So it kind of just like depends.
But this, I will say, the reason is because, again, this goes back to curiosity. We're in such closed systems right now. We used to travel in the summer, right? Or you'd go and do interesting things and experientially, and you'd get to meet new people. We just don't get to have any of that right now. You know, she's in her closed bubble with her friends, and I'm in my closed bubble with my stuff. And so what can we have that that bring us something new? And so I felt like TED Talks are at least a very easy way to expose yourself to something that you might not have any, other way of being able to bump into. So it just stretches a little bit of our understanding of how the world works.
That's a great suggestion. So just replaying that suggestion, Nancy advises that you watch one TED Talk every day, and that's just 20 minutes.
Harper found like the 6 and 11 minute ones, just so you know. So they don't even have to be the full 8.
You packed into that. Okay, that's great. Santiago, what are you watching? What have you been?
I just finished watching The Umbrella Academy.
Oh, that's really good.
I need to watch it.
Great cinematography, and the soundtrack is just amazing. And I'm about to start watching Killing Eve, the 3rd season. I'm obsessed with that show. It's so well done and so well written and acted and everything. So
Did you see The Politician?
Oh, yeah.
The Politician's great, particularly for your age group. I think that it's again, really well done, the 2nd season in particular. And it just shows you in this really entertaining, sarcastic, beautifully designed way, the opportunity within the generations and some of the different ways in which we approach things and think about things that I think are very, very insightful, as well as really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. In June we went through Black History Month. We loved Harriet. I finally got to see Get Out, and 13, the documentary on the prison system, was incredible. But we intersperse everything with reruns of The Office, which is we've got Dwight Schrute-isms, which is absolutely hilarious. He has he has something really funny to say about PowerPoint, which is which I can't remember quotes. But one question, what question do you have for Nancy? One question about the future for Nancy.
So I think that the one question that I thought that Santiago was going to ask me, or that I was thinking about, was if I had a crystal ball, like what is something that I wish I knew? And that's the only one that I think is a defining question of how we will build things moving forward. Will we have more jobs 10 or 20 years from now, or less jobs 10 or 20 years from now? Right? Depending on how this technological revolution rolls in, it will determine what kind of scaffolding we need and how society will look. And I wish we had a definitive answer to that, because we're rarely polarized on it, and we aren't making any really smart decisions because of it. So sort of the same way we handle climate change, which is what we kind of wish it away and hope that somehow it's going to be okay. I think the same thing is going to happen with job disruption. And I think that I wish I had a good, clear flag to run up the hill with.
I'm finding that this time is allowing for greater collaboration and collaboration that is not as rigidly structured.
100%.
So you work with each other with more trust and ease, and also you've understood that you need each other, and the necessity of not being be seen as the winner, but looking at a much more networked model, right? For instance, when I spoke to Santiago when he was on the International Student Edition, which was just a few weeks ago, and I found out that he just graduated and he's in Spain, and he's working with us, and it's fabulous the way we are finding ways to collaborate. But at the same time, what we're not doing is micromanaging and doing the same thing that you do when you're in a traditional company structure. You start trusting, and that trust is two ways, right? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So there's this plug and play that's coming up.
Yeah, I think there's a big conversation. We had all that. I was thinking about it this morning. I just got asked to do a talk again to the Middle East, and it's part of a 3 series. The first is about virtual work and what that will look like. Then I'll be talking about how does one build new capacities to be able to navigate that. But the third one I thought of you is energy management. And by that, it's all the social emotional stuff. Yeah. Right? All the pieces that allow us to feel well held and to build that trust and to allow us to open up and to deal with failures that don't go well and all that piece. I thought it was really fascinating. This pharmaceutical company in the Middle East, for that portion of their business, had that as one of the 3 key pillars to that. So that's, I think, a big shift, right? That wasn't as key on the leadership agenda a year ago as it is now.
Yeah, yeah. So Harper, are you ready with your question?
Yeah, that's not a very good question, but if you, anything that you've learned from the past to take into the future, what would you take? What would you learn from the past?
You know what? There's so many things about that, but I think the thing that I'm most struck by right now is the more real that we can become, right? The more that we can admit to whatever it is that we are either curious about or feeling or whatever, the dividends it pays back. Like when I open up about something, whether it's on a LinkedIn thing or in a conversation with a client or even in a talk, it's amazing how other people feel like they can, they have, they feel seen, or there's a resonance in there. So I guess I'm being really rewarded to be very, very, I don't know if authentic is the right word. I feel like I've always been, but a little bit more open about some of the stuff that I'm not so sure about. People seem to be, find a safe space in that. That makes sense.
So greater vulnerability.
Yeah, vulnerability is part of it. Or even like if I have a dark day, like there, as much as I put a thing on LinkedIn recently that I had a day of loss of hope, which for an optimist, it's a little scary. And I had to kind of work my way through it. And, was reminded that in history, man, people have had to go through things that are so much worse than we're going through right now, with so much less support and tools. And we were much crueler to each other, even, 50 years ago. So I think that there are a tremendous amount of things to be hopeful about. But, there's a day in which even I needed to kind of remind myself or reconnect with other people. So I think just admitting that, so it doesn't seem as though you have all the answers. I mean, I said this to a client the other day. The issue is you can say, I don't know yet, right? And the minute you give yourself the yet, it gives yourself some freedom. And I think that it took me a long time to learn that I didn't have to know all the answers at that moment.
Love that. And I think on that note, that's a great note to end this beautiful interview with both of you. And thank you, Santiago, for joining in as well. And we'll follow up and find out what's happening with your new book, and probably do another one if you really enjoy it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because I think this conversation is helping people, have confidence in navigating this is a really big part of the work right now. And I just love what you do, Ashaku. It's lovely to meet you, Santiago. It's really nice to share this space with Harper. We've actually learned some stuff about each other as we were preparing for this that I hadn't realized was going on for her. So thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Be sure to subscribe to our channel and to turn on the notification bell for our latest videos.